two stories to set the tone for this rant, and they may be triggering because they deal with sexual assault. Around fall of last year, the rapper T.I. made headlines when he let the world know that he required his 18-year-old daughter, Deja, to get virginity tests and has been doing so for years. He then went on to explain that virgins aren't fun and they're a lot of work, so men won't want to date his daughter. His daughter locked her Instagram account because men were flooding her with comments about taking her virginity. If you watched A Short History of Virginity, you know that I addressed the fact that virginity tests are highly inaccurate and traumatizing. I also talked about the superstitious obsessions that cultures have had with virgins that have put young women in danger. This sick cultural obsession has led to virginity tests being tragically common in the US. Per Rolling Stone, according to a 2016 survey of 288 American physicians, 10% responded that they had been asked by a parent or a family member to perform the two-finger test on a patient, and 34% said they had performed it themselves. I'm not shocked that T.I. is so obsessed with his daughter's virginity. Like most rappers, like most men with money, like most men invested in gender roles, T.I. has always shown red flags of being the kind of father who thinks policing his daughter's sexuality is his sacred duty. For starters, he is a serial cheater who disrespects his partner, and when his wife Tiny was once linked to another man, he went ballistic. Misogynists think cheating is a man thing and hate women who cheat while never having the same hatred for male cheaters. Secondly, T.I. has further confirmed his misogyny outside of his lyrics by insisting that he'd never vote for a female president because they are too emotional. Thirdly, T.I. has implied that married women don't have to consent to sex. In a podcast interview with his wife, he said, "See, you can't be rationing out stuff, talking about what you're gonna give nobody, because what's yours is mine and what's mine is yours. That means that little thing you got, that little sex box you got, is half mine. So you pick which side you want and that's yours. The rest of it is mine. We can split it right down the middle of the, what do they call it? The uvula." So yes, for many of us, it was no surprise that Tip would be so low and disgusting to check his daughter's virginity and brag about it. And of course, to round it all out, he's aware and okay with the fact that his 16-year-old son is sexually active.
I feel like as a man, I'm just naturally more overprotective of my daughter than I am of my sons. Bro.
That's also true. Sons can't get pregnant. Keep your daughter off the pole. You know what I'm saying? You spending time going to daddy-daughter dances and you taking them on trips where it's just you and her. Those are thought prevention hours that you putting in. If you ain't putting in your thought prevention hour, then your daughter end up or down. So don't blame her now.
Now, the second story is even more upsetting. It takes place in my 9th grade Spanish classroom. The teacher was out and we had a substitute. It was one of those substitute classes where there was no work getting done, just funny and sometimes lewd conversations, rapping freestyles, and snacks being shared. I forget how we arrived to the conversation that took place that day, but there were a group of us shooting the shits at our huddled desks. We were talking about virgins. All of us admitted to being virgins except for one girl who I'll call Enid. She was on the band, she had cut marks on her arm, which is why she always wore long shirts, and she told us she was not a virgin and that the man who had taken her virginity was her father. She said he raped her. She was crying and each of us was quiet. I'm sure there were disgusted looks, and I don't recall if I knew what the term incest was, but the first thing I thought of was, well, of course you're still a virgin if you were raped, and so I said that. A few of the other girls agreed with me. She cried and shook her head, and I remember we spent the rest of the period trying to convince her that she was still a virgin. To me, even at that young age with zero understanding of rape culture, I believed that your first sexual experience needed to be 100% consensual. But that didn't mean I had a fully evolved view of virginity. And while as an adult I agree that virginity itself is a dangerous social construct that harms women, I believe non-consensual sex can't count as losing your virginity. If we must live in a culture where we directly and indirectly idealize and commemorate the first time, then rape should not count. Your first time is your first consensual experience. My beliefs are not universal. Enid believed she was no longer a virgin, and numerous cultures throughout history have had protocols for raped girls being married to their rapists to restore their sense of honor. So what does this all have to do with soul ties? First, what are soul ties? The aggregated definition of soul ties are emotional bonds that form an attachment. To me, it sounds like a silly and superstitious way to explain human interactions, particularly particularly sexual ones. Numerous Christian writers and folks in my Twitter mentions have said that soul ties are not explicitly sexual, but in a society still obsessed with purity, it has become a new way to shame people, mostly women, who engage in casual sex. Because soul tie rhetoric is about emotions and women are made out to be the illogical and emotional sex.
Fuck you and these neighbors, I hate you!
I hate your ass too!
I love you!
It is clear that soul tie warnings target women. Soul ties are based on a belief that you are giving yourself to a partner during sex. This is an understandable sentiment, as every sexual encounter requires some level of trust. Trust that they'll keep the condom on, trust that they'll pull out, trust that she's on birth control, trust that both people are tested and STD free, trust that he will pay her for her services when the sex is over, etc. But mutual trust is not giving yourself to a partner. You were a whole human being before the encounter, you are a whole human being after the encounter.
Oh, let me light that for you, babe.
Wow.
Yeah, magic fingers.
Jesus Christ!
What? Get the Escalade, we're out of here.
Soul ties are a religious idea for a few reasons. First, they are based on the belief that we have souls. Secondly, they are based on the belief that God should be your ultimate love and focus in this life. As the Christian writers of DestinyImage.com explain, we are created to need an intimate relationship with God and are truly fulfilled when we are in union with Him. Any desire or love that hinders us from doing God's will is an inordinate or lustful infliction. They go on to make clear that you can have soul ties to items, places, and animals, as well as people. So off the bat, typical tweets warning about forming soul ties during sex are regularly made by people who have close emotional bonds with items, places, and animals. Shit, half these niggas are stans of celebrities. They have taken soul ties and co-opted it for a reality where women are becoming increasingly unrepentant for having premarital and casual sex or even being sex workers.
What if I want to have sex before I get married?
Well, I guess you just have to be prepared to die.
The highlighting of sexual activity simply reflects our obsession with purity and virginity. You won't catch these same people claiming that there are social media sites, designer clothes, music, or other experiences and things lurking inside of our bodies. Nope, just the people we've banged. With all of this in mind, can you even adopt soul tie rhetoric if you're an atheist? I say hell no, but maybe you can change my mind in the comments. I believe that soul ties are a way to avoid taking responsibility for accepting treatment you've identified as undesirable. In fact, soul tie rhetoric romanticizes poor decision making. For example, staying with a man who cheated on you because your two souls have been tied together through sexual activity is an excuse, a way to explain a lack of self-control. Soul ties are also a coping mechanism for dealing with feelings of lust or liking someone more than they like you. Because then you can just call them demonic and say they're a succubus when all they did was bone you and not catch feelings. But my biggest problem with soul tie rhetoric is how it enables rape culture and abuse. As I've mentioned, many people believe vaginal penetration, no matter if it's consensual or not, to count as a loss of virginity. Soul tie ideology tells survivors of sexual assault that a piece of their rapist lurks inside of them, that they are corrupted. If you have ever been raped, you know that it is a traumatic experience that evokes a loss of ownership over one's body, a feeling of being violated. How can rape survivors ever heal if there are dangerous loons shouting in their ears that their soul is tethered to the soul of their rapist? Listen to this disturbing quote from one of the Christian sites I checked out for information about soul ties. Sex is like gluing two pieces of wood together, and if done outside the context of marriage, it's like ripping them apart the next day. Of course, wood from the opposite board remains on each board. If this is the kind of garbage being spoon-fed to teens, especially in evangelical circles, it is no wonder why people wait so long to disclose sexual assault, if they ever do. Soul tie rhetoric seeks to establish a sense of shame in people, particularly women, who have casual sex or have sex for money. This sense of shame is only magnified for rape victims. The last thing I want to say is that soul tie rhetoric is really just an extension of body count rhetoric, where people place subjectively acceptable quotas on how many different people a person has experienced. I'm reminded of this when I see girls brag about keeping their body counts low. Even a self-proclaimed big old freak like Meg Thee Stallion has emphasized repeatedly how low her body count is and how she refucks her exes to avoid getting too high a number. Speaking Speaking of refucking exes, if sex is giving yourself to another person and giving yourself to too many people makes you undesirable, the way you date is likely to be impacted. For heterosexual girls across the country who are told that they're used up pieces of chewing gum if they have sex, seriously, tons of abstinence-only education courses use this metaphor, this can mean sticking with an abusive or destructive man because you believe you're used up and won't be able to find anybody else. These are the kinds of notions T.I. and other fathers like him are instilling in their daughters when they attempt to restrict their daughter's sexuality by policing them with virginity tests. So ultimately, should you be careful about who you have sex with because of STDs, pregnancy, and the simple fact that some people are crazy and dangerous? Yes, that's obvious. But you should be careful about all relationships, not just sexual ones. You don't need harmful soul tie rhetoric to encourage healthy sex habits. Because ultimately, can you be anti-rape culture and endorse soul tie rhetoric at the same time? No! What the fuck?
No, papi.
No, baby. The answer is a fat ass no.